These core principles serve as the lens through which families, family problems, and clinical change are typically viewed. They're not going to be things we talk a lot about, but they're going to be things in which all of our decisions and treatment delivery is going to be based in. First, it is trauma informed. And what that really means is the treatment is grounded in the idea that behavior problems of youth are frequently related not to bad intentions, but instead to the experiences of trauma that they've had. And our focus here is on helping both the youth and the caregivers find a noble intention of the behaviors of the other so that they can understand and frame either current or past struggles, not in a personalized, individualized way, but more as the result of where it actually comes from, which is the trauma and the invisible way in which trauma may have an impact on both the youth and the caregiver. The focus in a trauma-informed approach is to help developing a narrative, meaning an explanation, or as we're going to talk about it, a relational theme that helps cover the spectrum of care from placement to stabilization to permanency. So trauma-informed is the first core principle. We're involved in the child welfare and juvenile justice and mental health systems, and I think as we've moved along in our understanding of these systems and in terms of the struggles that people bring to the table, our clients in those systems, we realize that trauma is a big part of what we're dealing with as change agents in all these different systems. And when I say trauma, what I mean is both the degree of exposure that our families have had to different traumatic events, be they medical, being they behavioral, being they related to violence or changes in the family structure. In addition to exposure, there's also the notion that certain symptoms by individuals, though these get amplified in different individuals through the different developmental stages. So we're likely to see trauma emerge in different places in the developmental process, depending on what's going on. But being trauma-informed is because it's central to the experiences family have as they come to see us. And some of that trauma, as I said, might be related to old experience. It might be related to their experiences in the system that they're in currently. Being trauma-focused means that exposure to these events, it means understanding that this exposure is significant. It not only sets off different behavioral problems, but it's part of the family context that gives meaning to different behavior. Understanding trauma from a relational perspective helps you put it into perspective, helps you find the noble intention of people, and helps you understand the unique and very struggling. A family relational view on trauma focuses on breaking an ongoing cycle. So if you think a little bit about trauma comes from an experience, but trauma gets maintained within a family system, either by not paying attention to or paying too much attention to different activities of people and missing the trauma focus. By addressing the needs and addressing the youth and foster parents and permanency parents as a part of the system, we're able to look at a family relational perspective on what goes on. That is our outcome goal. Our outcome goal is a stable set of family relationships. So from the very beginning, we're going to bring that same family focus to you. Rather than the individual and the individual's behavior as being the central feature in trying how things are working and how things function, we put individual behaviors through the lens of the family and think about individual behaviors in terms of how they're related to other behaviors, how they're connected in relational patterns and meaning systems to the entire family, and to the way in which the family's problem definitions either get them unstuck or help them get on the same page and work together. If you take a family relational perspective, you look at behavior, problems, and different activities through the lens of how it affects everybody and how everybody in that system affects the other. Believe this, all behavior is part of a multi-systemic relational system. There's multiple mutual interactive components, the youth, the parents, the family, the extended family, and the community, among others. These different components make up a complicated web, a web in which each part is inexorably tied to the other parts. And when you move one, you move another. Thinking this way is really helpful because it means that you can intervene in different ways, and that when you change the behavior of a parent or a caretaker, you may change the behavior of a youth. And when you change the behavior of extended family, you could open up possibilities for the family to function differently. So a multi-systemic focus is important, that it helps you look in a 360-degree way at a behavior in a larger context. Problem behavior, then, taking a family relational perspective, is a complex interaction between that behavior and how it fits into and is impacted by and impacts other person's behavior in that same system. Basically, that means that when a caretaker or a youth behaves badly, that you have to think about what came before and what came after in terms of understanding them. Behavior is very much linked to the behavior of others. Problems, then, are best understood within the same context. If the family is a context to understand in general, then the family is a context to understand problems, and to try to see how the family is a primary unit for understanding that. Because not only will the family be our lens through which we understand problems, but it will be our entryway into how we help both family members and families change their behavior. Families are not the cause of problems. Families are a context in which mental health, child welfare, behavior problems occur. That's a really important point. You're not looking for the cause in the family. You're looking for the relational context that helps it maintain or promotes it staying. Now think about this. The problems that families struggle with are not so hard to solve. It's pretty easy to end something or begin something new. What's very difficult within the relational context is getting the different actors within that complicated system organized in a way that they can be on the same page. So the context is an important place. Families, as I said, don't cause behavior then, but families are a key factor in both engaging an individual in treatment, building motivation. They provide a context, a way, a platform, a setting in which people can try new behaviors, and they can help individuals stay maintaining a behavior and prevent relapse and provide ongoing support. So rather than a cause, they're a key factor in both change and maintaining change. So at the core of FFT is this notion of a family, right? And if you think a little bit about families, they're remarkable, remarkable systems. They have the ability to absorb all sorts of different activities by an individual person in the family. If you have a problematic youth or a problematic caretaker, families can absorb some of that behavior, and they have the ability to remain stable during that. It also means that families can help redirect some of the difficult experiences of individuals. Family systems can help people change. Individuals change their behavior best when the relational system around them helps support that. It can help improve their behavior, their mental health, their physical health through ongoing support. In many ways, these daily activities that families go through are healing interactions that are best thought of as ways to help the individual right themselves. And at the same time, families are very complex relational systems. They're not easy to understand, in large part because we've been focused and we've been taught to focus on causes rather than contexts. Think a little bit about how this works in a family system then. You certainly have the people involved, and all of us now know that multi-systemic systems have to do with more than the primary client. They have to do with those people that surround the primary client on an everyday basis, whether that be other siblings or other children or caretakers, family members, grandparents, partners of the parent, etc. At its first level, family systems are made up of those people. In addition, that family system moves through time through different developmental statuses or stages. Around the family system, there's more. There's a community relational system that involves peer groups, school, community, and extended family. These are systems outside the family that have expectations of them, that understand them in certain ways, that have come to deal with them in certain ways. Important context also for the behavior of people within the system. There's also a cultural context, because these family systems and community systems are built within a cultural context that has to do with race, and it has to do with ethnicity and religion, and it has to do with part of the country and setting, whether it's urban or rural in its environment. those factors also weigh on how and in what way we might want to understand different behaviors of family members. And then, as I said, these families move through this context, the community relational system, in their developmental stages as they move from having young children to being couples, to having young children, to having children with adolescents, to having young adults that they may be supporting. Thinking about clinical problems, then, you can think about clinical problems as coming from the family in a way, but less from a causal event and more from what we call stuckness. Think about it. By the time families come to see you, it's not that they just got a problem, they have a pain in their stomach. There's been a struggle that's been going on for some time. It's a little bit like a stone in your shoe. It's an irritation. If it comes out of your shoe, the irritation goes away. If not, that it continues to be there, and then it begins to cause problems. Think about the problem has been that the family's been functioning. They've come across something. They haven't been able to solve it. And now it has become part of them. It's a little as if delinquency, if you have a family in which a youth is a delinquent and involved in the justice system, when they come to the table for dinner, it's them and their delinquency that comes along with them. Same thing with substance use. Members of the family that have a substance abuse issue not only are people, but they also have their substance abuse struggles that come with them as well. And families have learned to wrap themselves around those and help maintain and help support them. In that way, family problems come to function, a central part about how families relate. And from a family relational perspective, it's important to think about where family problems really exist. And they exist in a couple of places. First, they exist in the family's ability and challenge within its context. So, for example, if you have a family in the child welfare system, one of the contextual challenges they have is their ability to maintain what's required of them. That interaction and the challenge of responding correctly to an important system around the family is one place in which problems develop. Second, they develop in behavior patterns within the family, meaning that there becomes a behavior pattern that ends up getting managed by the family and then in a weird way maintained by the family as an ongoing way that they do their everyday business, regardless of what the content or what the issue might be. Third, problems exist in the meaning and the problem definitions that people create around different events. If you think about it, events are really actually fairly neutral in their meaning. It is what we put on and what they've come to mean for us and how they're important for us that family problems become a big issue. So meaning and the way in which meaning is put by each individual family member onto a similar event is important. And a problem can exist as people get on different pages about that. And then lastly, problems can exist in what we call relational functions, or in the way in which family members are attached and glued together. We'll talk about relational functions as we move into later sections of the training. So 4 things. The context, can the family meet the needs of the context? The patterns, the meaning, and the functions within how the family is organized. And if you take a family relational perspective, it is within these 4 things that we would see problems existing. In a sense, what happens and what a clinical problem for a family is that they're stuck. I know it's not a very scientific way to say it, but they're stuck. They're stuck in the pattern. It's a stable one. The meanings seem intractable. They're struggling with this context, and their relational function has to have them glued together. And so in many ways, our task is to help families, is to help unstick families so that they can get better solutions, which can also then become stable in the future. And what they need from us are the things that they can't do themselves. They need to find a pathway out of their stuckness. And what I mean by that is if they could get out of this, they would. Families don't like pain. The people in families don't continue with dysfunctional patterns because they get something positive out of it or something that they like. They are just stuck. They're a closed system. They don't know how to move forward. They need then a number of things from us. First of all, they need some help out of the discouragement and their learned helplessness or their lack of motivation to get out. Now, it's important to remember that they're not unmotivated. they've been stuck for a while and they've lost their and become discouraged. Building motivation is encouraging them with the possibility that things can be different. They need a reason to take part in treatment. I mean, if you think a little bit about it, many of the families we work with didn't choose to work with us. And so it has to feel as if it is something relevant and for them and not just something for someone else for them to be able to take part. Has to be help that fits them. You can provide help in lots of different ways, but if we can provide help that fits how they work, the likelihood that they can incorporate it and assimilate it into how they work goes up. They need practical help and they need tools. And what I mean by practical help is that if they have trouble making the rent, let's help get them rent assistance. If they need food, let's take care of those practical urgent needs. And then at the end of the day, they need practical help because they need something that they'll be able to use in the future when you're gone in order to continue to solve the many problems that will come their ways. You know, what's interesting is that when they come to you, the families are probably not able to say everything that they need. They come hurting, they come struggling, they come emotional, they come angry at either the system or people around them. It is difficult for them to take those feelings and put it into concrete needs. So some of the things that they need that will help clarify them, some they'll be able to tell us, and other things are just not on their radar in the sense that becoming engaged in a treatment in order to be able to learn skills and maintain them are probably not the words the family would use. What they would say is that they want some help. They want some help that fits them. They want some help that they can keep doing. They want help that'll work. So don't look to the family to be able to tell you each thing they need. One thing they do need, and they will tell you, is this: they need to remain themselves.